imagine a fire. The flames are tall, orange and hungry. In the center of the heat stands a 19-year-old girl, tied to a wooden stake. Thousands are watching, some with tears, others with hatred. They have called her a witch, a liar, and a heretic. They want her to scream in regret. They want her to admit that she was wrong. But as the smoke rises, she doesn't beg for mercy. She doesn't scream in fear. Instead, she whispers a single name, over and over, with a clarity that silences the crowd. She is dying for the one thing they could never take away. How does a simple farm girl who couldn't read or write end up leading an army and changing the course of history? The story of Joan of Arc is the ultimate testament to the power of intuition. It is a story for anyone who has ever heard a quiet voice inside their heart telling them they are meant for something more, only to be told by the world that they are crazy, unqualified, or too small. Joan grew up in the small village of Domremy during the 100 Years' War. France was broken, bleeding, and leaderless. At the age of 13, Joan began to hear voices. To her, they were the voices of saints. To a psychologist today, they might be seen as the eruption of a profound internal conviction. These voices didn't tell her to hide. They told her to do the impossible, to drive the English from France and lead the Dauphin to his coronation. The weight of the world was against her. She was a peasant, a teenager, and a girl in a world ruled by men in iron. When she first told the local officials about her mission, they laughed at her. They told her to go home and help her mother. But Joan possessed a kind of authenticity that was unshakable. She didn't argue with her critics. She simply outlasted them. She understood that when your inner voice is clear, the noise of the world becomes secondary. Many of us today are paralyzed by the voices of society. We hear the voices of social media telling us we aren't successful enough. We hear the voices of our families telling us to be realistic. We hear the voice of our own fear, telling us we are imposters. We are so busy listening to the noise outside that we have lost the ability to hear the whisper inside. Joan of Arc teaches us that the path to greatness begins with the courage to listen to that whisper, even when it sounds like madness to everyone else. When Joan finally reached the royal court, she was tested. The king hid himself in a crowd of nobles to see if she could truly recognize him. Without hesitation, she walked past the men in gold and knelt before the true king. This wasn't magic, it was the clarity of a soul that had stopped seeking external validation. She knew her mission. She knew her truth. In that moment, she gained the agency to command generals who were twice her age. She led the siege of Ornans. She rode into battle with a banner in her hand and a vision in her heart. She was wounded by an arrow, but she didn't stop. Her strength didn't come from her muscles, but from her conviction. She proved that a single person, anchored in their truth, can move an entire nation. She showed us that leadership is not about a title, but about the alignment of your actions with your inner voice. But the most heroic part of her legacy isn't her victory. It is her defiance during her trial. Captured and sold to her enemies, she stood alone against dozens of the most powerful judges in Europe. For months, they tried to trap her with complex theological questions. They tried to break her spirit with the threat of torture. They wanted her to say that her voices were a lie. But Joan never wavered. Even when she was terrified, she chose her integrity over her survival. She realized that to betray your inner voice is to die while you are still alive. Her martyrdom was not a defeat. It was an eternal victory. The flames consumed her body, but they could not touch the light she had ignited. Within 25 years, her name was cleared. Centuries later, she became a saint. But you don't have to be religious to learn from Joan. You only have to be human. Healing begins when you stop apologizing for your dreams. You regain a sense of control over your life when you realize that you are the only one who has to live with your conscience. The world will always doubt you. The world will always tell you that you are too much or not enough. But those are just sounds in the wind. As you move forward, ask yourself, what is the whisper I have been ignoring? What would I do if I stopped caring about the approval of the crowd? You may not be called to lead an army, but you are called to lead your own life. Build your inner fortress of conviction. Trust your intuition. For in the end, as Joan of Arc showed us, the only voice that can truly guide you through the fire is the one that speaks from the depths of your own soul. Be brave enough to listen. Be brave enough to follow.